Welcome to the Slow Smoked Pigskin podcast. I'm Darren.
And I mean Drew. And this is
our podcast.
What are you doing? You're not Aaron.
You're not Drew.
I think we should go.
That was weird, right?
Yeah, it was.
Anyways, I'm Aaron.
I'm Drew.
And this is our podcast. Buddy, and welcome to the Slow Smoked Pigskin podcast. I'm Aaron. As you see, I'm all alone. I got no Drew. And Janelle was willing but needed to do some stuff for the kids. And everyone else in this league sucks and didn't want to come on the podcast. So you just get me talking for a little bit, which is going to be odd, but here we are. All right, so week 6, this week's weekly winner. Once again, congratulations, Steve Jackson. His team, he is the first 2-time winner this season. He had 154.75 points. He was considered the overachiever of the week, going the highest above his projection of 125.74. That being said, had he set his perfect lineup, it would have been 168.85. So congrats, Steve. You get another weekly prize. So let's continue talking about Steve. His matchup was the biggest blowout of the week. He, as I already mentioned, 154.75 points against Eddie's 100.1. So, Eddie, I'm glad I didn't take that how many times you got over 100 points bet, because you get over 100 points pretty regularly. So, nice job. That being said, had you set a better lineup, you could have scored 151.27 points. Steve was led by Baker Mayfield with 28.9 points, who I just have to point out, Baker was QB2 on the week, and with that, he is now QB2 on the season. If you told me that Baker was going to be QB2 any point of the season, I never would have believed that. So, good on you, bro. Derrick Henry, another big night, 25.2 points. A.J. Brown, 20.6. And Garrett Wilson with 20.7, which we'll talk about some stuff later, but that might be his last big week of the season. We shall see. Eddie got some big points from Jordan Love, 26.62. On the negative side, Steve got let down by Saquon Barkley with only 6.4 points. DK Metcalf only 6.3, and then Trey Sermon disappointed everybody in relief of Jonathan Taylor with 3.9 points. Eddie, Marvin Harrison with a big old goose this week. That's a rough one. Left on Steve's bench, Jared Goff had 25, but that's still less than Baker, so still made the right choice there. Cortland Sutton had 13.3, could have done better than DK Metcalf, but who the heck is going to start Cortland Sutton over DK Metcalf? A bench hero for Eddie, Detroit defense on his bench with 24.65 points. Demario Pop Douglas had 18.2. I guess we'll have to see if there's a real connection there between him and Drake May. And Christian Watson, finally healthy, scored 14.3. A couple of injuries coming out of this one, as I mentioned. Marvin Harrison Jr. left the game with a concussion after 0 points. With the way things are going this year, there's a good chance he misses at least one game. Josh Reynolds was on Eddie's bench, but he is going on IR with a broken finger. Michael Pittman has a back injury. He wasn't sure if he was going to play. They said he might go on IR. Then all of a sudden he was playing. Now, does that have anything to do with the fact that Joe Flacco started instead of Anthony Richardson? So if Anthony Richardson is listed as the starter next week and Michael Pittman decides to go on IR, that might say some stuff. A little bit interesting there. And also, Gus Edwards was placed on IR with an ankle injury. So he's out for at least 4 weeks. Kamani Vidal was a big pickup this week for people trying to replace him. The narrowest victory this week was Adrian versus Joe. Adrian with 132.72 points, Joe with 124.05. The good news is if they both set their perfect lineup, Adrian would have had 151 and Joe would have had 150.5. So, Joe, you lost anyways. Adrian got 24 points from Bijan Robinson. That's a nice week. He had a couple of touchdowns. People have been waiting for that one. Joe was led by Brock Purdy with 24.1. Adrian got let down by Mike Evans, only 4.4 points. I believe that's 2 weeks in a row. That's rough. But Joe got let down worse. Joe had not one, but two players with negative points. Chris Olave with -1 because he caught a pass for no yards and fumbled. And then Travis Etienne, by the way, Chris Olave got a concussion on that one. And Travis Etienne with -0.1 points before he went out with, I believe, a hamstring injury. On Adrian left Ray Davis on the bench, probably because nobody knew he was playing until Monday. But he had 16.7 points, actually looked pretty good. I still don't think he's taking James Cook's job, but looked legit, did the rookie. And then Joe had Josh Downs on his bench, who put up 17.68. So I already mentioned Olave got a concussion, and he's also already been ruled out for Thursday's game against the Broncos. Etienne has a hamstring injury, who is questionable. Coming back out of the bye, Aaron Jones has his hip injury that last I heard, he's still hopeful to play. It's weird for me to be talking about a defensive player, but Eric Kendricks did miss this game for the Cowboys with a calf injury. Let's try and pretend somehow one linebacker was the reason the Dallas defense was atrocious and got torched by the Lions. Let's try and believe that for a minute. And reports are coming out that Cooper Kupp is looking good and may actually be returning this week. So a lot of people drafted him pretty early, and he started to look good. Maybe the Rams can finally have a passing offense. Excuse me. Next matchup was me versus Jason Smith. Here's something I never expected to say with how good I normally am at setting a lineup. I was the most efficient manager of the week, getting the most the highest percentage of my possible max points. I got 148.93 out of a possible 155.48. Jason Smith only 130.1 out of a possible 143.9. I had Joe Mixon on my team, who was the top scoring running back of the week, 26.2. Very glad to have him back. And then this week, Josh Allen and Breece Hall combined for over 40 points on Monday night, which is a huge relief considering like a week ago they combined for about 10 points. Jason was led by Justin Fields with 22.7, and somehow 22.7 fantasy points and 2 rushing touchdowns is not good enough to keep your job when you have a stud like Russ Wilson waiting in the wings. Because I'm jumping ahead, but the Steelers have said that Russell Wilson is going to get first team reps in practice, which lines him up to potentially be the starter. This one makes no sense to me. Russ is old. Justin Fields has a potential to be your future, whereas Russ doesn't. I don't get it, but so be it. Maybe it's because they don't want people to lose their job because of injury. Yeah, either way, don't feel good. This is a problem with recording alone. It gets silence when I try and take a drink. David Montgomery had 20.5 points for Jason, so that's great. Justin Fields and David Montgomery, both in his booms, who I traded to him. Lovely. Anyways, Deebo Samuel, 20.5 points. I got let down by Jake Ferguson, who only had 2.6 points because the Dallas offense was just inept. And then Antonio Gibson with Ramondre Stevenson out had a beautiful opportunity. What did he do? 5.8 points. No, thank you. Jason got let down by Jordan Mason, who only had 8.7. He was in and out of the game with an injury, so time will tell whether he makes it in this week. Darnell Mooney had been a hot wide receiver for everybody, only had 5.3. And then Amari Cooper with only 6.2 points because Deshaun Watson doesn't seem to be able to throw the ball anywhere close to him. Or when he does, Amari seems to not want to catch it and has the dropsies. My best player on my bench was Rashad Bateman with 9.1, but considering I was pretty close to my max, I'm good with it. Jason, the Chicago Bears fan, left Keenan Allen on his bench, who had 18.6 points. So, excuse me, that could have helped him. Debo is now dealing with a wrist injury. I would expect him to still play from that, but Debo seems to always be banged up. Jordan Mason's injury was a shoulder. As I said, he left the game for a while, but then returned. Time will tell whether he makes it back. Tajay Spears got a hamstring injury. He hasn't been great this year, but if he's out of the way, that opens up lots of opportunities for Tony Pollard. Devin Singletary missed this game with his groin injury. He may be back. He may not. Jonathan Brooks, the rookie for the Panthers, who hasn't played yet this year, coming off an ACL his last year in college, has been designated to return, so may see him active in the next couple of weeks. I still don't expect him to be the full-time starter for a little bit. And then Tua was already announced that he will not be playing in week 7, but they are expecting him to be back this season. So time will tell when we can finally start some of our Dolphins receivers, because right now it's just miserable to watch them play. Excuse me. Next matchup was the battle of the worst managers, and I say the worst managers because of the points they scored versus the points they could have scored. Josh beat Raf, and I typed the wrong number here. Josh beat Raf 123.36 versus 111.66. However, if they had both actually set proper lineups, Josh could have scored 176.84 and Raf could have scored 170.46. So I believe those were actually the two highest potential scores for the week, but they both set absolutely terrible lineups, and Raf's was the actual worst lineup in terms of percentage of points scored versus how many he could have. So, nice job, boys. Josh did start Terry McLaurin, who got him 20.3. Mark Andrews sighting, finally. He didn't have a great day, but he had 14.1 fantasy points and a touchdown, so that's better than it's been. And then Jake Bates with 20 points as a kicker for the Lions. And ironically, I swear that Steve picked him up and then dropped him, and then Josh picked him back up. All right. Maybe I got that wrong, but I'm pretty certain. Cole Kmet, 21.5 points for Raf, and Drake London, 16.4. Josh got let down by Kyler Murray with only 11.96, and Dontavian Wicks, who was the hot waiver wire pickup, only had 1.4 points and picked up an injury in the process. Raf had Jerome Ford only put up 1.4 points before he has an injury to deal with Nick Chubb coming back. That is not good news for him. Zach Moss, who ended up with 0 points. He did play, but he had a couple of carries, but I believe he fumbled and ended the process. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong player. Zach Moss had, where'd he go? 6 carries for 13 yards, 1 reception for 2 yards, and a fumble lost, which when you do all the math equals exactly 0 points, which is a rough day. And then with Travis Etienne going down, everybody thought that with how Tanks Bigsby had been doing this year, that he would come in and take over the work. He actually got less carries than Dearness Johnson. Tank Bigsby only ended with 3.95 fantasy points. Considering these guys didn't know how to set a lineup this week, lots of points left on the bench. Tyrone Tracy coming in relief of Devin Singletary had 19.7. Tyler Algier had 19.3, which is just crazy considering that Bijan also had 24 points. So big day from the running backs, which is why Kirk Cousins did not have a great day. Then Raf, somehow Dameon Pierce, after Joe Mixon being the number one running back of the week, Dameon Pierce still came in relief, had 15.2. Gabe Davis, he shows up once in a blue moon. He had 19. And then with Dontavian Wicks being useless, Romeo Doubs had 19.4 points. On the injury front, James Cook missed this game with a toe injury. That wasn't announced until Monday, and then everyone was scrambling. That wasn't cool. Dontavian Wicks, as I said, got a shoulder injury after being disappointing and maybe sidelined. And with Christian Watson back and Jaden Reed being their number one, and they still got Bo Melton and Romeo Doubs, Wicks had his opportunity, and that may be past now. Dallas Goedert had a bad day, partially because he got a hamstring injury. And now that Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown were back in the lineup, they used their good wide receivers instead of worrying about Goddard, who's real slow. I mentioned Jerome Ford got a hamstring injury. And then on a separate note, Marshawn Lloyd, who's been on IR, may return soon for the Packers, which, considering their backup situation, may be good. Jacobs hasn't looked great, so if Lloyd can get some opportunities, it could be big. Next matchup, Jason Freeman versus Drew. So Jason had 151.89 points, almost got the second weekly win, but Steve got to be the first two-time winner. Jason only could have put up 159.25, so he did pretty well on his efficiency. Drew's team sucked. Last week, he won the week with 160 whatever points it was, and this week he scored 98.03. Eek. And his max potential was still only 119.91. Eek. Jason had the number one wide receiver on the week, who's Chris Godwin, who has looked stellar this year. I mean, it makes sense with Baker having a good year that Chris Godwin is being a beneficiary. Jalen Hurts, as I mentioned, since he's got two of his two wide receivers back, had 21.86. Zay Flowers had a whole bunch of catches, 17.9 points. Yeah, our bet is not even close now. Zay Flowers is absolutely crushing Calvin Ridley because Will Levis sucks. Kenneth Walker also had 16.9 points in Jason's starting lineup. Drew, he made the trade and got Bucky Irving, who was his lead scorer with 19.6 points. And Jamison Williams, also a product of a recent Drew trade, had 16.2 points for Drew. Jason's only bust was Christian Kirk with 6.4. And I wrote a note here that Drew's busts were yes, because a whole lot of his team let him down. Brandon Ayuk, he had his one good week, and now he's back to 4.7 points. Not looking good there. Rome Odunze only had 5 points. DJ Moore only had 4, which is crazy because, well, I guess it's not crazy. I know Caleb Williams had a big day, but the touchdowns went to Komet, which is why Komet had 21, and Odunze and Moore only had 5 and 4, respectively. And then anybody who watched the Monday night game, the kickers were having a rough day with the wind, and Tyler Bass ended up with 4 points because I think he had a couple missed field goals and a missed extra point or something like that, if I remember correctly. Bench heroes for Jason technically were Bo Nix and Drake May, who had 21.74 and 22.52 respectively. But Jalen Hurts, as I mentioned, had 21.86. So they're all right in the same range. Basically, he couldn't make a wrong choice this week, which is always a nice position to be in. And then Drew had left Alan Lazard on the bench, who had 20.4 points. Although, once again, I don't expect that to be happening anytime soon. Injuries. Brian Robinson missed this game with a knee injury, but is looking to likely be back for week 7. And then Ricky Pearsall, after being shot before the season, is going to return to practice soon. Now, I don't know that he's going to get a lot of playing time anytime soon and have any fantasy impact, but good on the guy getting back on the field after being shot. Like it's crazy how many times this has happened recently. We got Ricky Pearsall, we got Tank Dell, Brian Robinson. Why are they all getting shot? This is just crazy. And then our final matchup of the week was another stink fest, but somebody had to win. Janelle with 117.04 points beat Neil with 99. Janelle could have put up 143.24. Neil could have put up 127.76. So, yeah, not good. Janelle was led by Najee with 19.2 and George Kittle, who's continuing to be probably the best tight end in fantasy this year. Neil was led by Tank Dell with 15.2. You know, with Nico Collins out, we were all hoping that Tank Dell would get some more opportunities, and that did play out. Janelle had some bye week and injury issues, so she had to put in some funny folks in her lineup, like Elijah Moore, who only gave her 0.8 points. Javonte Williams disappointed again, 3.1. Pat Freiermuth with only 2.6. And then the surprising one was James Conner, who's been having a pretty good year, quietly been having a good year with 4.6. I mentioned that the Falcons running backs had a good day, which explains why Kirk Cousins didn't. He only had 12.5 points. And then for some reason, Neil decided to start the ghost of Zeke, who only had 1.7. Like, he looks old. He looks slow. Rico Dowdle's way better than him. And the Cowboys have a horrible running game. So if you're the worst option on a horrible running game, it's just not going to be good for you. Bench heroes. Janelle left the Tampa Bay defense on her bench with 23.57 points. Neil left Evan Ingram on the bench with 13.2, and for some reason didn't start Jaden Daniels, who had 20.96, which is just odd to me because I've seen some rankings that are putting Jaden Daniels at number 1. Now, that was for week 7, and I get it. Last week they were playing the Ravens, but I don't know, Neil. You get some galaxy brain there. Start Jaden Daniels until he gives you a reason not to. Injuries. Rashid Shaheed had a knee injury, went to LA to have surgery. He's now placed on IR, which is a bummer. He was having a kind of a breakout year. Derek Carr missed the game because of an oblique, and he's also not likely to play on Thursday night. Taysom Hill missed the game with his rib injury and is also not likely to play Thursday night. So basically the Broncos defense going against the Saints without Rashid Shaheed, without Derek Carr, without Chris Olave, and without Taysom Hill. The Broncos defense has been good this year, so that's not looking good. Rashad White missed the game with a foot, and with how Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker have performed, the coach Todd Bowles has come out and said that they may be looking at a 3-headed monster. So Rashad White had a stranglehold of this backfield at the beginning of the season and all last year, and it looks like that's over. So that's just going to muddy the waters for being able to start any running back from Tampa Bay. Malik Neighbors is still questionable. He missed the game, but he's still questionable for this week with his concussion. Achane is also questionable with a concussion coming off their bye week, but all the reports are that he is likely to play. Jonathan Taylor missed this week with an ankle injury. That's why Trey Sermon was playing. It's still questionable whether he's going to be able to make it back. And then another defensive player to talk about because he was actually crushing for Janelle's fantasy team. Aiden Hutchinson, I'd be shocked if he's not done for the year. If you didn't see the video or pictures, it was pretty nasty. He broke both bones in his leg in a very nasty fashion. He had surgery. The Lions came out and said his timeline for returns indefinite. That being said, with how that looked, I'd be absolutely shocked if he's back this season. Don't like to see that happen to anybody, especially a good young player like that. So that's all the matchups. And with all that being said, where are we in the standings? So Steve keeps the lead at 9-3. We then have three teams in order at 8-4, which are Adrian, Jason Freeman, and Josh. However, Josh had been in second place, and because of tiebreakers and whatnot, Adrian moves up to second, Jason Freeman moves up to third, Josh drops down to fourth. Janelle is 7-5. She moves down from third to fifth place. I am now 6-6 and moved from the 8th spot back into the final playoff spot at 6, even though we're a long way from the playoffs. Raph and Joe are also 6-6, each dropped one position to now 7-8. And then 9 through 12 actually stayed even. Drew and Jason Smith are both 4-8, and Neil and Eddie are the bottom dwellers at 3-9. Waiver wire this week. I forgot to write those notes down. Let's just pull it up real quick and see what happened. Okay, so waiver claims. $35 was the winning bid for Sean Tucker after his big performance. Eddie had also bid 27. He said his original bid was 38 and he decided to drop it. Sounds like that was a mistake. Jason Freeman bid 20. Jason Smith bid 15 and Drew bid 9. So 5 bids on that one. Impressive. Eddie picked up above means since he may be the number one wide receiver for the Saints now for only $2. And then with the injury to Jerome Ford and the Nick Chubb situation uncertain, Eddie also picked up Pierre Strong with a $0 bid. So, we did actually have a trade this week. Drew got Alan Lazard and Bucky Irving from Raph in exchange for Khalil Shakir and a 2025 second. Ironically, I mentioned that Bucky Irving was Drew's highest performing player, and Alan Lazard actually had more points than him on Drew's bench. So, and I don't believe Khalil Shakir played. So, for the short term, Drew won that deal substantially. And after I processed the trade, Drew sent me a text. He's like, "So what do you got to say?" I'm like, "Meh. Y'all are trading for a bunch of backups and stuff. I didn't really care." So, I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about that one. Anybody wants to put it in the chat? We're on gravy. Bet board, as I mentioned, Flowers has taken a huge lead on Ridley. That's not fun. In the Raph versus Jason matchup, Jason has taken the lead. What just happened? Why did my video turn off? Okay. Well, let's hope this is still recording. So, Raph and Joe are tied at 6-6, which means they might need to determine a tiebreaker if this is going to continue this way to make sure that somebody actually wins the bet. And then we got some big-time NFL news. Actually, before that, let me just mention teams on bye next week are the Bears and Cowboys, which I don't care any of you wanting to be talking smack. I understand how much you all hate the Cowboys and blah, blah, blah. But there is some fantasy impacts there as well as from the Bears. So then some big time NFL news. So Devontae Adams when I was mentioning why Garrett Wilson might have some issues, Davante Adams is showing up in New York now. Who would have thought that he eventually was going to follow Aaron Rodgers there? So he's going to the Jets for a conditional third-round pick that can become a second if either Adams becomes a first or second team All-Pro, or he is on the active roster and the Jets make it to either the AFC Championship game or Super Bowl. I mean, whatever. The Jets are also taking on all of the money of Davante Adams' contract. Basically, I guess they're just saying, what do you want, Aaron Rodgers? We'll give it to you, whether it's good for our team in the long run or not. In the short term, it is probably good for their team. It hurts Garrett Wilson, in my opinion. It makes Alan Lazard useless. It makes Mike Williams useless. By the way, one reason that it's going to hurt Garrett Wilson is just Aaron Rodgers loves to target Davante Adams. And Garrett Wilson hasn't been breaking away and scoring lots of touchdowns. He's been performing based on volume, and he's just not going to get the same volume with Davante there. By the way, Davante's missed the last couple of weeks with a hamstring injury, which apparently now seems to be fine. How shocking is that? I also saw that, within hours, or maybe I believe it was within hours of the trade being announced, Davante was at Aaron Rodgers' house to record the Pat McAfee show, and it was just like, all right, we all figured this was coming, and now it's official. Another big wide receiver trade, which isn't totally surprising, and I think is a good move. Amari Cooper and a 6th-round pick were traded to the Bills for a 3rd and the 7th. So the Browns get a 3rd and a 7th. The Browns get a 3rd and a 7th. Amari Cooper gets to leave and not have to get passes from Deshaun Watson and instead get them from a competent quarterback and Josh Allen. This could be huge. This takes Amari Cooper's stock way up. This helps the Bills' offense because they finally have a true number 1 receiver now. So to me, this is quite a big deal. Another trade happened. Cam Akers was traded back to the Minnesota Vikings from the Houston Texans. I did not see what the compensation was back to the Texans. I mean, the Texans signed him late in the offseason, and if they're getting anything back for him, good on them. This one's just a surprise because Cam Akers was in Minnesota last year. And I wonder what this says about the health of Aaron Jones. And Ty Chandler had been looking good, so I don't know what's up with this one, but it happened. Reminder, this weekend there is another London game at 6:30 Pacific time, so make sure you get up early and set your lineups and whatnot. It is the Patriots versus Jaguars, which means if we're sending those two teams, it could be the worst thing the U.S. has done to England since about 1776. Either way, yeah, that's one that I don't think is really worth getting up to watch. I mean, I'll probably be awake anyway, so I'll probably watch it, but I definitely wouldn't get up for it. The Bills released Marquez Valdez-Scantling to make room for Amari Cooper on their roster. Not surprised. MVS is not good. And since the Jets picked up Davante Adams, there are now rumblings that Mike Williams is now going to be available for trade. Don't know who's going to want him. He hasn't looked great, just coming off an injury. But people need a wide receiver, so maybe. So that is the summary for this week. It's a lot less fun doing this alone. I don't want to do this a lot. But at least I got you all your information, and maybe next time one of you will actually join me. Not that any of you are listening to this anyways. But good luck with this week. Let's all have fun, and talk to y'all again soon. Cheers, y'all.